Hello and welcome to an educational video about personality testing in the workplace. My name is Richard and I am the Systems Architect for Online Talent Manager, a psychometric test developer based in the Netherlands. One of the ways we validate that a test is measuring what we think it is measuring is to compare the results of candidates between a new test and an established test. And we did several of these cross-validation studies while developing the Autogram test for the competing values framework. And this information can help practitioners who are familiar with the old model bring their knowledge and experience forward by showing how what they already know compares with what they are trying to learn. So this video is going to show the correlations and the comparisons between a well-known model called the Myers-Briggs Type Indicator, otherwise known as the MBTI. The MBTI is measuring personality, how people perceive the world, and how people make decisions. As a quick recap, let's look at the scales of the MBTI. Direction of attention, introversion, concepts and ideas, versus extroversion. That's the first scale, the EI scale. How do you make decisions? Do you rely on information gathered from intuition, or do you rely on facts and figures, which is more sensing, IS? The third scale is TF, and what that's telling you is once you have your information, you make decisions based on thinking or feeling. And lastly, can you deal with uncertainty, which would be the P, or do you prefer final positions and definitive endings? And that's the J of the last scale, the PJ of the last scale. So the Octogram is measuring how you actually behave in the workplace, and the Octogram is explained in a separate video. If you haven't seen it yet, you just click over here to see how those traits contrast with each other. In our research, we asked a few hundred people to take the Autogram and the MBTI and correlated their answers together, and here's what the results showed us. The MBTI has the extroversion-introversion scale, and the Octogram has an external orientation and an internal orientation. But these do not map onto each other precisely. Extroversion on the MBTI correlated with the Octogram traits of the pioneer, which is talking about openness to new ideas, networker, which was an outward focus and you want to communicate your ideas to other people, and achiever, which is very action-oriented and moving ahead and booking results. Introversion on the MBTI correlated with the anchor and analyst roles of the Autogram, which are about concepts and plans and organization and dealing with data, kind of holding back your emotions and keeping them inside. So when the Autogram talks about an internal focus, it's talking about more about things inside the organization, inside yourself, and external is things outside yourself. When the MBTI is talking about introversion and extroversion, it's speaking more about behavior and how communicative you are, how free you are with your emotions, and how outwardly focused they are, kind of blending two things together in the MBTI. For sensing and intuition, the S and N traits of the MBTI, we got pretty much the same result. Intuition is looking at the traits in the upper right side of the Autogram, where the innovation and adhocracy are. And sensing is looking at traits in the lower left side, order, hierarchy. So sensing is dealing more with facts and concrete information, while intuition is dealing in more abstract concepts and ideas. Thinking and feeling on the MBTI were not much of a surprise because they mapped directly onto the vertical axis of the Autogram, which talks about emotional control. The feeling side, F scale of the MBTI, is a direct reflection of the Autogram traits that link up with emotional openness. And the thinking side of the MBTI, the T scale on the MBTI, mapped onto the Autogram traits that mean emotional control. Lastly, the MBTI scale of J or P, judging or perception, just seemed to repeat the upper right, lower left axis of the earlier traits. According to Myers, judging types like to have matters settled, and perceptive types prefer to keep decisions open. So pioneers want flexibility and freedom. Anchors want things set down correctly and orderly on the page. So that comparison makes sense from a conceptual standpoint, and that was backed up by real data from the statistical analysis of our candidates. So to sum up, the MBTI can be correlated to and explained in terms of the Octogram. Several of the scales of the MBTI seem to map over to just a few traits in the Octogram. So the Octogram is covering a broader perspective, has a broader perspective on a candidate's behavior and personality than the MBTI. But I don't want to stop there. I think it's important to talk about the philosophical differences between these two instruments. Number one, dichotomy. The MBTI is putting each of the traits into binary opposition with each other. You're either introverted or extroverted. You're sensing or intuitive. And that runs counter to how biological systems actually operate. When you plot out a population of pretty much any biological or personality trait, you get bell curves, not boxes. Humans are analog, they're not digital. So right out of the gate, I have a problem with dropping people into one of the 16 boxes of the MBTI because I have only seen a few people who are so extreme in every trait at the same time. It just doesn't match up with the reality that most people live in. Most people are somewhere in between these two extremes. They're not one or the other. The second problem we have is with the stability of the results. When you take the Autogram and then take it again a year later, your results will look very similar to each other, unless something really traumatic happened to you, or like a brain injury or some life-altering event. So on the Autogram, one or two scales might flow up 1 or 2 points, or might go up or down 1 or 2 points. Work styles can change, but they usually change pretty slowly, and we're talking years, not months. For the MBTI, you're told that you can just change the results if you don't like them. You can say to yourself, I don't feel like an S. I feel more N. And that's okay, according to their documentation. But if your scores can be changed that way, why not just write down 4 letters and skip the cost and time of filling in a questionnaire? This is one of the reasons that the publisher of the MBTI does not recommend it for selection or hiring purposes. But I do not want to give you the wrong impression that the Octogram is measuring everything, because it's not. The Octogram is a reflection of a business model. Businesses need to do lots of different things. People have different work styles, and the Octogram just brings these two ideas into the same frame of reference. But for information about what motivates people to work, you would need a career values test. To see how they communicate with others, you would need a communication styles test. To see what kind of company they want to work in or would prefer to work in, you would need a culture test. To see a more holistic view of a candidate's personality, you would need a broader personality test. To see how intelligent someone is, you would need a capacity test. So no single test is going to measure everything. Different problems require different solutions, which is why OTM has so many different instruments in the toolbox to allow you the flexibility to find the right tool for the job. Not everything is a nail. Okay, that wraps up another action-packed video on personality testing. Online Talent Manager is the developer and owner of the Autogram test and a complete library of other psychometric tests, reports, and tools. If you are interested in using the Autogram in your own business or to support other organizations through consultancy, contact us today to get started. Be sure to check out our other videos on this channel, and thank you for watching.